take one or many, 2 or 7, and pass it along. Take as many as you like, as many as you want in your box.
I want to eat some.
You want to eat some? No, these are not, well, okay. They may be edible, but they're not good for your system. A little more roughage than you'd be used to. All right. Trick questions. Do any of you have favorite trick questions that either you like to ask or that you've heard? Trick questions.
How many zombies have you killed?
Oh.
How many zombies have you killed?
That's from The Walking Dead.
There you go. How many zombies have you killed? That's a trick question, I think. Because they're already dead, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, death lends itself to a lot of trick questions, doesn't it? Yay, welcome, welcome.
When did you stop beating your wife?
When did you stop eating your
Beating.
Oh, beating your wife.
Yeah.
Okay. Beating your wife.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's a really uncomfortable question, isn't it? When did you stop beating your wife? Yes, Joe.
If a plane, half filled with Canadians, half filled with Americans, crashes right on the American-Canadian border, where do they bury the survivors?
Wow.
Good trick question. Good trick question. I heard it, I have it in here because it's one of my favorite trick questions. Oh, I have it on the border of the United States and Mexico. So where do you bury the survivors? You don't, they're survivors! You don't bury them. Okay. All right. Any other favorite trick questions? If they come to mind, just shout them out. Okay. So one of my favorite trick questions is this: if I died, would you get married again? Carol says, of course. The joke is actually, it goes on longer, and it's in the traditional marriage form where there's a husband and wife, and the wife is asking the question. The husband says, well, yes, I would. And the wife says, really? Would she sleep in our bed? Well, probably. Would she drive my car? Well, yes. Would she use my golf clubs? Oh no, she's left-handed. Then there's the one about burying the survivors. On a more serious note, there are trick questions called koans. Not koans, like koans. It's a paradox to be meditated upon that is used to train Zen Buddhist monks to abandon ultimate dependence on reason. Abandon ultimate dependence on reason, so hard for some of us, and to force them into gaining sudden intuitive enlightenment. Cool. The best known koan might be this one. If a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? Right? Anybody have an answer for that one?
I saw the commercial.
The commercial.
It does make a sound.
It does?
It does.
Oh, the sound scream. Does it scream? Yeah, okay. Oh, what was that other? I can't remember. It has to do with trees screaming for no good reason. But anyway, all right, these kinds of things, these kinds of koans. If they intrigue you, there's a website with 101 of them.
Can you spell it?
Excuse me?
Can you spell that?
Koan. Rabbis are known for using questions to teach, known as the Socratic method, named after the classical Greek philosopher Socrates, who lived like 400 years before Jesus. We always mark everything by Jesus, right? We call that the marking of, I guess it was when he's 30? No, when he's born, as year 1, 0. Anyway, it's a way of stimulating critical thinking, asking questions. Something lecturing and rote memorization and sermonizing doesn't necessarily accomplish. I don't expect you to remember a thing after I preach a sermon. Rabbinical debate through questioning is a style well known of Jesus of Nazareth. And he knew a trick question was coming from miles away. He was a smart guy. So when some Sadducees, upper-class officials who maintained the temple, and argued that there was no such thing as resurrection, asked Jesus a question about what would happen in the resurrection, their stealth was for naught. He knew where they were coming from. Not only do they ask about a post-mortem state, resurrection, post-mortem state which doesn't exist for them, they ask an absurd question about Levirate marriage. The purpose of Levirate marriage, brothers marrying their brother's childless widow, was to produce sons. Who cares about the daughters? It's sons, right? To continue the first brother's lineage and preserve family ownership of property. This was also the way that you achieved immortality, not by resurrection, but through one's progeny who carried on the name and would say the Kaddish, the prayer of the dead, and name you every year. So as Luke tells it, Jesus points out that marriage would not be necessary in a state of resurrection. In God's realm, there's no need of children for the purposes of immortality because we don't die anymore. There's no physical property, no land or golf clubs, and therefore no need of children to inherit them. In God's realm, which, by the way, exists right here when we treat each other with respect, an extravagant welcome, and applesauce, there is one law. Love God with your whole being and your neighbor and as yourself. You can love yourself. You're supposed to love yourself and love your neighbor as yourself. That's the only law that we need to live by. The other legal stuff, the laws that protect us from each other, which, by the way, marriage is, it's a law to protect us from each other, are no longer necessary. So the passage actually continues with Jesus arguing for the reality of resurrection based on the story of the burning bush, and God being the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and as God is the God of the living, not of the dead, these patriarchs must be alive with God, blah, 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 blah. And he goes on and on and on. Luke is really wordy when he tells the story. But his main point has already been made. We are God's children. God's name is the name that we carry into eternity, and God's realm is what we inherit, and that's all that matters. Now, there's scholarly controversy over whether Jesus really said all of this. His witty reply to a hostile question is characteristic of the guy, but the style of argument is much more like that of later rabbis. Commentaries tend to focus on the answer Jesus gives in this story. We are children of God. Law is irrelevant in God's realm. Amen. If you go online, that's basically what you'll find. I always check the other people online. But Jesus was not a man of answers. His style was to ask questions, raise paradoxical situations, and leave his listeners to wrestle with their own conclusions. I believe that one of the reasons he rarely answered questions, responding to questions with more questions or with stories, was that he was the best of teachers, leading his followers to exercise critical thinking. Another reason might be that he was wise. Duh! He had actually reflected on the nature of being alive, and found that living is about coexisting with difficult questions. We love to say that children come into this world without an owner's manual. It's true, we all do. And we know that being alive is dangerous. The truth being that anything that is alive will eventually die. Any moment. We come into this existence not with answers, but with a bunch of questions in our mental pocket. Questions that rattle around in there, some of which are lost as others are gathered up along the way. Can you tell me a question that you've kept in your mental pocket all your life, or at least part of your life? A mental question that comes up for you about life. What keeps coming up for you?
What happens after you die?
What happens after you die?
Where am I going?
Where am I going?
How in the world did I get here?
How in the world did I get here? Those are related questions.
What all are I meant to do in this life?
What all am I meant to do in this life?
was young, I had a lot of questions, but because this was before Google, and I always assumed that they were just questions that you thought about, like, I was a man at babies and stuff like that. But now, most questions you can go on Google, but those that we just mentioned,
Yeah.
you can't go on Google and get the answer, I don't think.
Another classic is why do bad things happen to good people?
Why do bad
And versus
Oh,
investors.
Mhm. Yeah. Why do bad things happen to good people? Why do great things happen to lousy people? Yeah, and if you Google that, you might get a list of books to read, but
That's right.
So here's some of my questions, which I think are echoes of some of yours. If there is a purpose to life, is that purpose to do or to be? Or as some people say, to do. And it's a question of meaning. What is the meaning of life, being alive, living? Is there a meaning? If not, the question becomes to be or not to be. The question of purpose is also a question of vocation or calling. Is making a living or having a job enough? Are we born with a passion and purpose, something we're supposed to do? And if so, how do we discern that? And is this a first world question? Because there's a lot of folks who only have the option to try to survive. If life is about being, is Buddhism a better path? Because those Buddhists really know how to be in a moment. I don't. That's why I'm a Congregationalist. The only meditation I can really do is yoga, because you get to move while you're doing it. Margot Adler, author of Drawing Down the Moon, which is a wonderful resource on earth-based religions, once told me that the earth itself is the book. The divine power that created the universe wrote the earth. So why do we need ink on paper to tell us what is true? That question is in my mental pocket as a constant irritant. I'm an English major. I love books. But I think her question is an excellent redirect, especially in our environmental times. Is there a truth in Typhoon Haiyan that does not need words for us to grasp it? For 51 years, I was in the Childless Club. Sort of a badge of honor. I never had a kid. People who grieved the fact that they were not parents. I had a lot of questions during those years. One of which was, of course, why me, God? There are people throwing babies in dumpsters. How come I don't get them? Late in life, I have joined the Mothers Club. It was overnight. I was in the club. It was bizarre. It almost broke my neck. A distinct and profound change. Many more questions and answers have come along with this distinction. And I'm going to leave you here with a few of the questions that have come up since I got Peter. And if you want more of them, you can read them on Facebook. I tend to post them there. First one is, why? To be applied to any situation. Is Santa real? Then where are his reindeer? And how does he fit down the chimney? And why doesn't Santa bring live animals? In our house, Santa does not bring live animals, just so you know. Is Jesus alive or dead? Make up your mind. Can I have a dog? This is a difficult question. Where is my birth mother? Hello?
Oh my gosh. I guess we know where
This
she
is
is.
so
now.
weird, Mom. I'm in the middle of preaching a sermon, and my phone just answered itself. Bye. Talk to you later.
Hello? Google that.
Timing is everything.
That was bizarre. Some of you met my mom on Sunday, right?
Yes.
She's got Alzheimer's, so there's no way she could have known she was calling right now. So, the question, where's my birth mother? Do I have brothers and sisters somewhere? He does, and we finally had to tell him about it. Why can't I be normal like other kids? Are you happy, Mama? Always a question when because he knows when I say, I am not happy, Peter. I am not happy with what you're doing. So the question is, are you happy, Mama? And one recently, he keeps asking me this, who's going to die first, you or me? Depends on what you do right now. My prayer is that my son, that all of us live long, meaningful lives with lots of questions in our pockets that we can finger like prayer stones. You got them. And if you need some more, if you think of more questions, grab them on the way out. And my belief is that because we are God's children, we will eventually get a chance to ask those questions and get some kind of answer, even if what we get is a pocket full of even better